Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to try to tackle a challenging topic of helping you understand why so many of you experience self-loathing and self-hatred towards the self. This is something that is incredibly common in transgender community. This is something that I would probably say 80% of individuals I have come to work with have experienced some form of self-loathing, self-hatred, undervaluing, underdevaluing, sense of self-worth, lacking self-worth, low self-esteem, all of those things that fall into this category. And I see this again and again and again. I see so many of you feel this way when you comment in under a lot of my videos. I can read it in your comments. It breaks my heart that so many of you feel this way. And as a psychologist, it is my job to try to formulate an understanding why you may feel particular way and what may be responsible for making you feel particular way in order to help you have a greater perspective, in order to help you have a greater understanding. So let me try to tackle it in this video. We'll be talking about one of the primary reasons that I see why a lot of you feel this way, in hopes that it can help you break out of that pattern. So as children, a lot of you have experienced gender dysphoria starting in childhood. Not all of you. Gender dysphoria does not have to manifest in childhood, but a lot of you have experienced it in childhood or in your early teens, perhaps either before or after puberty. And as children, one of the natural things that we tend to do is try to express ourselves. We try to get more in touch with ourselves because we are not yet inundated with these concepts of restrictions that are superimposed in the world upon us later on as we develop. So as children, what happens is you try to express yourself. If any of you grow up in a place where what you were trying to express in regards to gender was not allowed, was seen as inappropriate or not right. Perhaps you grew up in a religious household, perhaps, and again, not to say that all religious households were not gender affirming, but this is just very common. Perhaps you grew up in a very conservative environment. Perhaps you grew up with parents who just held beliefs that that was not okay. It would take one look from one of your parents of disgust, disapproval, even if your parents at that moment may not have meant to harm you, but your parents were projecting their own innate beliefs. This is just what we do as human beings. It can take one word or one phrase that your parents tell you, either what are you doing? That's disgusting. Why are you wearing girls' clothes? Or what are you doing? That's not appropriate. You're not a boy. Or stop doing this. What's wrong with you? Any of those phrases are going to be enough to start making you feel shameful and guilty about a part of yourself that you're resonating with very strongly, and about a part of yourself that you feel like who you are. As kids, what you most likely did is, in order to aim to please your parents, because as kids, we still young, we don't have a very strong sense of self. So we try to please our parents. That's just natural and normal. Most likely a lot of you try to do is you try to hide and put away this part of your identity. And what you try to do is you try to please your parents, because now you had internalized element of shame and guilt about yourself. So now what's happening is that part of you in relationship to essential aspect of who you are is starting to lack in self-worth and in value. And as a result, what you probably felt as a kid is this, without even knowing, this completely could be subconscious. If I just try to please my parents, if I just try to be a good kid, or if I just try to stay out of a trouble, they will love me. And then without even telling me, they will also love this part about myself that I already tried to express to themselves. And so the cycle of self-pleasing the other in order to feel loved and in order not to be abandoned begins at an early age. For these individuals for whom this happened in childhood, you can see how it manifests when you're adults. You get into relationships or you get into marriages. And what happens? You please you, as the person you're with, you take on so many responsibilities that at a point when you start to realize who you are in regard to your gender, you will have a really hard time owning it. Why? Because you have not only been told that this part of you is shameful and guilty, but you also have gone again and again through the cycle of self-pleasing the other and never pleasing and taking care of yourself. This is why a lot of you feel like you are responsible for your families and for your kids to the point where you can't even confront or deal with your own gender dysphoria. Because there's also part of you that is afraid that if you were going to do it, you're not going to be loved and you are going to be abandoned. It's going back and back into the cycle. This is how the cycle tends to work. It's a vicious cycle. And this is why a lot of you also end up incorporating and accumulating tremendous amount of self-hatred and self-loathing. Because since childhood, when you became aware, all the way until the day you even were conscious about your gender identity, all of the developmental years, all of the stages of your life, you were constantly, every time this part of you would come to the surface, you were constantly shuffling it inside, telling yourself that it's wrong, it's inappropriate, you should be ashamed of it, it's horrible, you shouldn't be feeling this way. You were maybe even using very negative self-language towards yourself. I'm a freak, I'm a monster, I shouldn't exist, this is against God, this is a sin, whatever you were telling yourself. So as a result, you were introjecting and you were accumulating over and over again self-hatred and self-loathing onto yourself. When we self-hate and self-loathe ourselves, what happens to us is that we drop in our sense of confidence and especially our sense of self-worth and self-value. We start to devalue who we are. We feel like as human beings, we don't matter. So then we become, and I apologize for this analogy, but then we become doormats for everybody else to step on and to shit all over because we're so afraid that nobody will love us and that people are going to abandon us. This is what's horrible little unravelings that starts in childhood with, at least in regards to gender dysphoria, where somebody, parent, a friend, a teacher, anybody, looked at you and told you that who you are is bad or wrong or disgusting. And this unraveling thread continues into adulthood. And I'm not judging any of you for incorporating self-loathing. I completely understand as a psychologist how that happened, and it breaks my heart that it happens on tremendously big proportions to so many of you. And it's almost unavoidable. It's unavoidable because we live in a society where then society further bombards you and further amplifies the message you already got as a child. When society bombards and amplifies the message you got as a child, that message becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you tell yourself, see, my parents were right. This is wrong. This is bad. And you start self-hating and self-loathing yourself even more. It's a huge problem for our collective conscious. It's a huge problem for us as humanity. It's a huge problem to how we all treat each other. And it's a huge problem for you, all of you especially, because gender diversity is normal. Gender, being trans, being non-binary, being of any other gender identity is fucking normal. I cannot stress this enough. Any psychologist who says that is not normal, perhaps are studying some very limited scope of biological or not biological, psychological point of views, because it's not the way we see today. It's not the way it's been told to us by applying, especially sticking to this concepts of natural law and then sticking to the concepts of biological binaries only. That's not how it works. So for a lot of you have accumulated, I went like on a tangent there. I'm like, obviously so passionately pissed off at what's happening in the world. Sorry. This is what's happening. This is why a lot of you have accumulated this feeling of self-worth and self-hatred. Now, there's a lot of you who have not had the childhood experiences, right? And that's fine. Nonetheless, whether you're conscious or not, you had childhood experience, you started to have at some point in your life experiences in regards to your gender. And when you're starting to have those experiences, you most likely are getting now bombarded still by at least societal implications of what that means and how society sees you. And that will further breed self-hatred and loathing. Chances are, and I see this all the time, for people who became aware they are transgender later in adulthood, chances are there still has been some awareness earlier in life, but you just did not have the words to express it. And chances are you probably did try to express on some subliminal message and still got the same messages, nonverbal or verbal, that communicated to you that this is bad or this is wrong. This is one of the reasons why people have what we call regressional material, where it stays regressed for a very, very long period of time. So the cycle of self-loathing and self-hatred is very hard to break sometimes. The reason why it's so hard to break is because the longer you've been in the cycle, the longer you have also been telling yourself a narrative that this is just who you are. I am a person that has dysphoria and therefore nobody's going to love me, and I'm ashamed of myself, and what I have is really bad, it's really wrong, and it's really not appropriate, and I will never fit in, and on and on and on and on. So not only is it to a bigger extent a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it is also something that you have really incorporated, and now you're so afraid, fearful of any other different narrative coming in. Again, this is why so many of you who are in marriages, have kids, have families, tell me that you feel tremendous amount of responsibility. You feel so guilty being who you are. You feel so guilty acknowledging your gender dysphoria. The reason why you feel so guilty is because a part of you fears that if you are acknowledge who you are, then you lose people around you. Then nobody will love you. It's like, again, this sense of devaluing. All of you need to start valuing yourself. Above all of you need to start valuing the fact that you have a fundamental human right to be who you are on this planet. Now, I know this sounds counter to what's happening with all the anti-trans legislation, but it doesn't negate the fact that the human fundamental right is still there. And the same has happened and continue to happen to so many people across different demographic, different races, different minorities. We all have human fundamental right to be who we are. Now, there's a difference between having that right and having a privilege to express that right. And in some states, that privilege is being taken away. So it's very, very difficult. The way you can all start to cultivating and breaking this narrative of self-loathing and self-hatred is to understand that what you have really introjected is a simple projection either from your parents, from society, or from somebody else. That is just simply not true. You can start valuing yourself by start seeing things in your life where you neglect yourself and start taking little steps to now own who you are. Little steps to pay attention to yourself. It's just like with any other aspects of ourselves where we need to raise our self-value. If you are a financial breadwinner for the family or for yourself or for your relationship, and you have a tendency to devalue yourself in regards to your financial distribution, and you spend all of the money on your partners or on anything else but yourself, start there. Buy yourself flowers, buy yourself chocolates, take yourself a massage, small. You don't need to go buy yourself an expensive car. Start small. Start valuing yourself, that you are worthy of love, that you're worthy of being in a relationship, that you're worthy to be with somebody that sees you for who you are and loves you for who you are. There's nothing to be ashamed about being a transgender person. I know that society tells you otherwise, but notice that people in society who tell you otherwise are oftentimes people who don't know what they're talking about. None of them are people who work in this with you at all. None of those people are the ones who are involved in any of your lives. It is usually some commentator. It's usually somebody that hosts a platform, usually somebody who likes just to spin out narratives. It is seldom, if ever, a professional who actually works and understands what you're struggling with. So notice how those people who tell you all the things you should be feeling about yourself don't know what they're talking about to begin with. But you need to break the cycle of self-loathing and cycle of self-hatred. Telling yourself that you're not worthy again and again and again because of who you are is going to destroy you. It's going to destroy you, and it's going to make you feel unloved, unfulfilled, and it's going to continue to make you live in misery versus potentially living in happiness. Now, I don't know about you, but that is not a life worth living. That is a painful existence. And I don't want it for anybody. And this is why it breaks my heart, because I see this again and again and again. So hopefully this helps you understand how you got into this cycle and the ways you can start breaking the cycle and start thinking about yourself. I tell all of my clients, you all need to learn, and I'm telling all of you who are watching this right now, you all need to learn how to be healthy selfish. Yes, healthy selfish. There is such a thing where you take care of your needs. Remember how I said in one of my videos, put the oxygen mask first on yourself before you put it on somebody else. If you can't take care of your needs first, your essential needs, I'm not talking about, again, increasing your self-worth by extravagance, but taking care of your health is taking care of your essential needs. If you're not taking care of your essential needs, you can't be there then for everybody else around you who you plan on taking care of. You just won't have capacity to do that. So please start thinking about yourself in regards to your mental health, in regards to your physical health, in regards to your well-being. Very, very important. Comment below, let me know. Have you felt this? I know that a lot of you have felt this, have experienced this. If you broke down the cycle of self-loathing, self-hatred, what helped you share with others. I love reading all of your comments. I know that others love reading all of your comments too. So share your comments, share what has helped you, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.